Welcome to the AEN Stories channel.
I turned 48 this year, old enough to know that truth rarely arrives as a trumpet blast. It shows up as a cleared throat, a glance held a second too long, a sentence that sounds harmless until it echoes. If you'd asked me in January what our family looked like, I would have shown you a picture from the church picnic, my wife Laura in a blue dress with choir folders under her arm, our son Noah pretending not to smile, me with a folding table under one hand and a coil of extension cord in the other. We were the kind of family people asked to just help with one more thing. We belong to a mid-sized church off a state highway lined with feed stores and a new Starbucks that pretends to understand our town. I'm the guy who knows where the big coffee urn lives and which breaker to flip when the fellowship hall lights decide to go Old Testament on us. Laura sings alto in the choir, the sort of voice that makes people close their eyes because it suggests their own might someday do the same. Noah is 17, baseball cap, calculus, a kindness he doesn't advertise. We have a rhythm: Wednesday night suppers, Sunday services, the second Monday planning meeting where everyone brings ideas and leaves with a to-do list. Our pastor is one of those men who can make a room quiet by walking into it and then fill it without raising his voice. He's younger than me by a few years, older than Noah by a couple of generations of wisdom. He listens like it's his job, which, I suppose, it is. It was late April when he pulled me aside. We were in the kitchen off the fellowship hall, washing big aluminum pans you can't get clean without both prayer and a Scotch-Brite pad. People were lingering in the doorway in the way people do when they aren't ready to drive home to their real lives. He dried his hands on a towel and said, "David, can I borrow you for a second?" I assumed he wanted to talk about the silent auction we were planning for the benevolence fund. "We're short on clipboards again," I said, "because the devil lives in logistics." He shook his head. His eyes went somewhere gentler. "I want to be careful," he said, "and men only say that when they know the next sentence isn't going to fit in a church kitchen. You and Laura are pillars here. If anything was not well, I'd want you to have a friend who told you before it got worse." I waited. A sink dripped. Somewhere a child laughed, and I wondered how many of us would go to bed tonight holding our breath and calling it sleep. "I heard a conversation I wasn't meant to hear," he said finally. "Backstage, after the service. Not my business, unless it becomes my business because it breaks a home or a church. I don't know the full truth. I know enough to say," he stopped, changed lanes. "Be careful, David. Look with love, but look." He didn't say Laura's name. He didn't have to. Ministry is a language of implication. I drove home with the windows down because air felt like something I could control. In the driveway, the porch light threw shadows that reminded me of everything the house knew about us that we didn't. Laura was at the kitchen table, a stack of choir music spread out, pencil behind her ear. She looked up and gave me a smile I'd known since before we had a mortgage. "Pastor said you were quite the kitchen hero," she said. "That's my spiritual gift," I said. "Sanctification by grease trap." We laughed, the easy way married people do when their mouths remember the choreography. I watched her fold a piece of music, write a note in that tiny, neat handwriting that looks like someone who doesn't misplace things. I saw nothing different. Which is another way of saying, I saw everything the same, and that didn't help. The next week I became a detective by accident. It's funny how holy work, picking up tables, setting chairs, teaches you where all the doors are. I started noticing the backstage hallway after choir practice, the way Laura lingered by the back exit, phone in hand, the slight delay before she answered a question about dinner plans. I didn't go through her phone. I didn't track her car. That's not the man I want to remember when Noah asks me someday how I handled this. What I did was smaller and, maybe, more damning. I paid attention to the ordinary. Tuesday nights at the grocery store that turned into Wednesday afternoons because the choir moved rehearsal. A new perfume, light and unfamiliar, that didn't match the bottle in our bathroom. A message from an unknown number that flashed on her screen while it was on the counter, "So proud of you today." You'd glowed. She told me it was from a choir friend about a solo. I said lovely, and hated the way my voice found the neutral gear. I told myself stories. All husbands do. It's nothing. It's something. It's a crush. It's a canyon. It's in my head. It's behind that closed door. The pastor's warning kept humming in my chest. Look with love, but look. The church runs a big spring benefit every May, barbecue plates, a silent auction, a dessert dash where people bid against each other for cakes they know they shouldn't eat. It's our most cheerful attempt to raise money for utility bills and Motel 6 rooms when someone gets put out of their house during a cold snap. Laura chaired the music portion this year, choir numbers, a bluegrass quartet, a high school gospel group that could have sung the paint off the walls if the fire code let them. I was on tables and chairs and the part where you smile at people you haven't seen since last year and tell them you're glad they came. The night of the benefit, the gym smelled like smoke and sugar and goodwill. People put on their nice jeans and tucked their napkins into their collars like they were pretending to be children at a fancy restaurant. Laura floated, greeting people by name, hugging women who needed to be hugged, squeezing hands to convey messages entire paragraphs couldn't hold. Her parents came, her mother with lipstick like a declaration, her father with a hat he never takes off indoors except in the sanctuary. They sat with Noah at a table near the stage, where the sound is worst and the view is best. I had a job, so I did it. That's one of the things I know how to do when my chest can't decide between heartbeat and drumline. I refilled the iced tea. I moved an extra table by the wall because a busload of people from a sister church arrived late and their smiles said they'd forgive any inconvenience if I could just find them a place to sit. I made sure the microphone worked, which felt like fate. Halfway through the evening, I saw Laura slip behind the curtain off the side of the stage, the one that hides the hallway to the choir room. I don't think anyone but me would have noticed. 10 minutes passed. 15. I told myself she was fixing a music stand or soothing a teenager who had decided that stage fright is a theological problem. I went to the side door, the one with the exit sign that only buzzes when you listen for it. The backstage hallway is narrow and smells faintly of dust and brass polish. I heard voices. Not intimate. Not loud. Not safe. Laura's voice, the one she uses when she's trying on truth in a mirror. A man's voice, lower, a little breathless. I could make out enough to know the plot. Nothing to quote in a courtroom. Enough to know the pastor had not misheard. I didn't walk in. I didn't throw the curtain back. I went the long way around, out the back door into the loading dock air, around past the kitchen where someone was arguing with a tray of baked beans, and back into the gym through the cafeteria entrance. I found the sound guy and asked for a spare handheld mic. He handed it to me without question because I am a man who always has a practical reason to ask for things. The benefit has a moment every year when someone gets up and says thank you and reminds the room why we do this, how the money pays for gas to the hospital and a week at the motel for a woman leaving a bad situation and water bills that mean kids can shower before school. Usually the pastor does it. He was about to stand when I did. He saw me. He saw the mic. He saw my face. He put his hand on my elbow. I thought he might take the mic, but he didn't. He squeezed and let go, which felt like consent or mercy. Maybe both. Friends, I started, which is a word we throw around in churches like a couch throw, pretty and meant to make you feel at home. The room went respectfully quiet. I could feel my in-laws' eyes on me, Noah's attention sharpened, Laura somewhere behind the curtain walking back toward me or away from me. I hadn't decided which would be worse. We're here tonight because we tell the truth with our money, I said. We say, there are needs, and we will meet them. I held the mic a little tighter. I'm going to ask us to tell the truth with our lives too. The pastor took half a step toward me and then stopped. His face said, tread gently. My chest said, tread anyway. Someone I love has been unfaithful, I said. I didn't say her name. I didn't list details. I didn't turn the gym into a courtroom. I said a sentence that sounded like a hymn stripped of melody. I learned it here, I added, because this is where we are honest, if we are honest at all. The room did what rooms do when they hear something that requires a different air. There was a rustle and then nothing. A woman near the auction tables put her hand on her mouth. A deacon I've known for 15 years bowed his head like a man who has suddenly remembered a prayer he forgot he knew. I could feel my father-in-law's gaze like a weight. I could imagine my mother-in-law's lips tightening into the shape of a word she would regret. I looked at Noah. He was very still. That's a thing I've learned about my son, stillness means the water is moving fast under the surface. I'm not telling this to embarrass anyone, I said, which is only partly true, I was telling it because the secret had moved into our house and changed the locks. I'm telling it because hiding rot doesn't stop the house from falling. We will deal with this as a family. We will do it with grace where we can and truth where we must. If you are praying people, pray for us." I handed the mic to the pastor, who stepped up with the steady of a man who's been asked to catch falling glass. He didn't try to undo what I'd done. He prayed for mercy and for wisdom and for the benevolence fund and for people who were going to need both this week. The room exhaled like they'd all been holding the same breath. Laura came out from behind the curtain and walked to our table without looking at me. Her face was the face of a woman who has crossed a border and is trying to remember the new country's laws. Her mother leaned toward her, whispering urgently in a cadence I know too well, "Not here, not now, not like this." Her father stood, not dull enough to be intimidating, just upright enough to be clear, and put his hand on my shoulder. "I am sorry," he said aloud, so other people could hear the sentence. "You did not do wrong." Then he looked at Laura, a sorrow I hadn't seen before softening the line of his jaw. "You have not only lied to your husband," he said quietly. "You have lied to your church." Her mother turned on him. "Don't make this public," she hissed. "We don't air laundry. We fix it at home." "We have been airing it," he said, not unkindly. "Just not with soap." Noah stood. He didn't say anything to his mother. He came to stand next to me and put his hand on the back of my shoulder, a gesture that made my knees feel unreliable. "We should go," he said, "to both of us, to all of us." The pastor caught my eye and nodded, the kind of nod that says, "We'll handle the rest." He did. The event went on. The music resumed. Money was raised for light bills and bedsheets. In another corner of the same night, a family left quietly through the side door. At home, the kitchen light was too bright. Laura stood near the sink with her hands braced on the counter like a person who'd finished a long run and found there was no finish line. Noah went upstairs without asking permission and closed his door gently, the way he does when anger comes dressed as survival. Her parents arrived minutes later because love sometimes means forgetting how to read a room. Her mother started with accusation, "How could you humiliate her?" Her father cut in, "How could we wait any longer?" "Enough," I said, only louder than I intended at the end. "This is my house." That sentence felt like a thing I'd been saving for a time I hoped would not exist. I softened. "Sit if you're going to sit. Leave if you're going to fight." They sat. We didn't talk like we had answers. We talked like people who needed nouns. Laura said it out loud, there was someone else, she'd met him after choir, she had ended it a week ago, she was sorry for the duration, the deception, the damage. I asked the small questions I could ask without breaking the table further. "Is he in the church?" "No." "How long?" "Months." "Did you tell anyone?" She swallowed. "The choir friend." A text thread that used too many heart emojis. The pastor didn't know. He had only heard. I looked at her hands and thought of the wedding band we had sized too big because we were young and didn't know how fingers change. Her mother argued for secrecy. Her father argued for confession. I argued for sleep. At midnight, I told her parents we loved them and asked them to go home. They did, both of them looking older than when they arrived. Laura and I stood in the hall like tourists in the wrong museum. "I'll sleep in the guest room," she said. I nodded. It felt cruel and kind at the same time. In the days after, the church did the best version of itself. People didn't ask for details. They brought casseroles not because casseroles fix adultery but because this is how we speak when we don't know what to say. The pastor came by with a box of tea and a prayer that did not sound like a line read from a script. He didn't defend me. He didn't punish Laura. He shepherded. It is a rare gift. Noah stopped talking to Laura for a week. He was polite in the way kindness is when it has decided to go on strike. "Do you want milk?" she'd ask. "I can get it," he'd say. He threw himself into batting practice, into physics problems that seemed easier than home. On the 7th day, he asked her to drop him at school. She came back red-eyed but steady. "Forgiveness, I am learning, sometimes arrives as a ride at 7:50 a.m. We went to counseling. The first session felt like someone was peeling wallpaper off a wall I didn't want to admit was wet underneath. The counselor was a woman in her 60s with a cardigan that looked like it had hugged 1,000 difficult people. She asked why and how and what now. Laura said lonely and small and wrong. I said tired and blind and angry. The counselor said we could not rebuild with the old instructions. She drew 3 circles: marriage, church, child, and told us to pay attention to where we stood in each. I told Laura I wasn't leaving yet. Not because I was noble. Because I wasn't done telling the truth to my son about who his parents are beyond a single bad decision. She told me she would do whatever work there is to do. I told her there would be more than both of us wanted. We agreed on boundaries like 2 people who had read the same manual. We took rings off for a time, not as punishment, but as a way to say, we will not pretend. On the second Sunday after the benefit, Laura did not sing. She sat with me and Noah, between us, and held the bulletin like a life raft. People did not avoid us. They touched our shoulders and said they were praying. One older woman, the kind who smuggles peppermints in her purse for small children, pressed a candy into Laura's hand like absolution. I watched Laura cry the way you cry when you didn't plan to and decided to anyway. Her father has become my ally in the quiet way fathers become different men when their daughters need them to be. He shows up with a rake. He stands at the edge of the yard and talks about soil. Then he says a sentence about loyalty or regret just once, like a man planting a tree that will grow without witnesses. Her mother still calls and wants to know when we will put this behind us. I tell her we are not in front of it or behind it. We are inside it. Sometimes she hangs up mad. Sometimes she brings a lemon pie and leaves it on the porch like a message the birds might read. I wrote a letter to the pastor. I told him he had done right to pull me aside. I told him I understood why he had not told me more. He wrote back, in ink, "The Lord is near to the brokenhearted." Near doesn't fix. Near holds. It sits now in my desk drawer under the tape and rubber bands. As for the man, no, he wasn't in our church. Yes, I know his name. No, I have not spoken to him. There are doors that lead to rooms where the only furniture is more anger. I have enough chairs already. Noah asked me one night, in the car outside his friend's house, "Are you going to divorce Mom?" The words sat between us like a cold cup no one wanted to pick up. "I don't know," I said. "We're trying not to lie to you." He nodded. "Okay. Then, I hate church right now." I said I understood. He said, "I don't hate God." I said I was glad. He said, "I don't know what I think about Mom." I said, "Me neither," and he laughed a little, which made the car warmer. Weeks passed. We made dinners and bad jokes and better boundaries. Laura met with the pastor and then, quietly, with 2 women from the choir who love her enough to tell her the truth with caramel cake. She wrote an apology to the music team. She did not stand up and confess from the pulpit, "This is not that kind of church." She is learning to be small without disappearing. I am learning to be big without becoming a wall. If you are waiting for a clean ending, our life does not have one yet. We are still married. Some nights we sleep in the same bed. Some nights we do not. We do not pretend this is over. We do not pretend it will kill us. We go to baseball games and clap for our son. We argue about whether the dishwasher is loaded like a maniac or a saint. We take separate walks and meet back at the driveway and say, "What do you want for dinner?" As if dinner were the question. At the next church workday, I found myself in the kitchen again with aluminum pans and a stubborn stain. The pastor came in, rolled up his sleeves, and took the other side of the sink. We didn't talk about the benefit. We talked about the new water heater. We talked about the youth trip. Then, after a while, he said, "How's your breath?" I looked at him. "You were holding it a couple of weeks ago," he said. "Are you breathing yet?" "Some," I said. "That's something," he said. "We'll keep breathing. One service at a time." On a Wednesday night in June, Noah came home from practice sweaty and hungry and 16 in a way that made me want to build him a house inside a house. He opened the fridge and said, "There's no milk," like milk was the key to salvation. Laura grabbed her keys. "I'll run to the store," she said. He hesitated. "Want to come?" she asked, and he did. They came back 20 minutes later with milk and cereal and 2 ice cream sandwiches missing from the box. They were laughing about something the cashier said about the price of eggs. I stood at the sink and wanted to thank a cashier I will never meet for knowing how to interrupt despair. When I go to bed now, I whisper a prayer I stole from the old ladies with peppermints: Lord, make us truthful and kind in the right order. I don't always manage it. Neither does Laura. Some days the truth shows up without kindness and I want to send it back. Some days kindness arrives and tells me lies. We try again. The benefit this year raised enough to keep the lights on for a dozen houses through August. Somewhere, a family will sit at a kitchen table under a bulb that would have been dark and they will not know that the money that kept it glowing was counted in a gym where a husband told the truth with a microphone because he didn't know what else to do. That is fine. They don't have to know our story. It is enough that the lights are on. As for ours, our light flickers. It does not go out. On Sunday mornings, I still carry tables. Laura hums under her breath while she pours coffee. Noah holds the door for a woman with a walker and then pretends he did not. We are, in a way that is both smaller and larger than before, still here. If you stand at the back of the sanctuary after the service, you can hear the murmur of people trying to tell the truth about their week to someone who will listen. Sometimes I think that sound is what keeps the roof up. Sometimes I think it's what keeps me standing. Either way, I listen. I look with love. And I look. Thank you for listening my story. If you want more raw, real, and gripping stories like this one, subscribe to the AEN Stories channel. Your support keeps these stories alive.